In this video, I'll show you 5 basic techniques that every pro guitarist uses to craft their solos. And while these techniques are basic and you can get started on them today, there's something that you're going to use throughout the rest of your guitar career, and they'll be the foundation for your lead guitar playing. And make sure to stick around to the end of the video where I'm going to show you a really cool lick that we're going to put together with all of these techniques. Before we begin, remember to like and subscribe. That way you get notified when I post new content. I post new videos like this several times a week. And don't worry, if you get sick of me, you can always unsubscribe. And here we go. So I got the idea to do this video for my jiu-jitsu instructor. He was talking about how some of the best jiu-jitsu competitors don't do really fancy stuff. They just focus on the basics and they do them really, really well, and they win lots of competitions. And I was thinking about that because it really translates to guitar playing as well. Some of the masters of guitar like Jimmy Page and Jimi Hendrix, they don't do like really fancy or technical things, but they do the basics that I'm going to show you today really, really well throughout their solos, and it sounds amazing. So the first technique that I'm going to show you today is the hammer-on. And the hammer-on basically consists of playing one note and then using a second finger to change the pitch of that note. And so, for example, if we're playing the first note with our index finger, let's say at the 5th fret of the G string, then we can hammer on with our middle finger, our ring finger, or our pinky finger, depending on the position we want to go to. One of the most common is our ring finger going 2 frets up from the first note. And so while this technique seems simple, there's a little bit to it. So we're going to want to pick that first note, and then we're going to need to use a decent amount of force to hit that second note. Because if we just kind of lightly press, we're going to kind of mute the note. So we need to really hammer our finger down onto that second fret. And again, it doesn't have to be just 2 frets up. It can be 1 fret up, 2 frets up, 3 frets up. And we can also do it from our middle finger to our ring finger, or our ring finger to our pinky, or really any other combination. And so this technique is used a lot for like ascending progressions, but it really can be used anytime you want to do some type of phrasing that isn't just picking every note. We can play something like, which sounds different than. So this is something you can work on practicing with all of your fingers. For me, the most common I use is the hammer-on from the index finger to the ring finger. But it really kind of depends on the scale. So there's really no downside to just practicing all those different variations. And so the next technique that we're going to talk about is the pull-off. And the pull-off is basically the opposite of the hammer-on. So instead of hammering on, we're going to pull off. So instead of going from lower note to higher note, we're going from higher to lower. One way to do it is to have both of your fingers in position before you pick the note. So let's say you already have your ring finger pressed down and your index finger pressed down. Then the note carries through. And like the hammer-ons, you can also do it with different fingers. Or like this. And when you're first starting, I recommend holding both fingers in the position you want them. But as you progress and you get more comfortable with this, you can roll into the pull-off. And it sounds a little different. It can kind of affect the voicing or how your lead sounds. But when you're first starting, it may be difficult to get that timing down, in which case you might end up with like an open note in between, which can sound cool too, but it's just not the pull-off that we're trying to do today. And again, these are great for descending phrasing. So work on those two. Like I said, the most common for me is ring to index. So if you're going to practice any, I would practice those. But working with the other fingers is definitely going to help you a lot too. All right, so the next technique is a combination of hammer-ons and pull-offs, the hammer-on pull-off. And just like it sounds, we're going to hammer on and pull off, but all in one picking motion. So we start with our index finger at the 5th fret. We do the hammer-on to the 7th fret here. And then we just do our pull-off without picking. And we can pick each time, or we can do a really long one, which you've probably like heard famous guitar players do. For just the standard hammer-on pull-off, we're again hammering on and then just pulling off. So it's important to keep that index finger rooted that entire time and press down on that fret, because we're coming back to it. And then for a really long back and forth hammer-on pull-off where you're doing it over and over again, one trick to do this and keep that sustain through is to almost kind of pull that string with your ring finger. And I'm kind of exaggerating here and hitting some other strings to show you, but I'm kind of using that motion. It's almost like scraping and pulling the string to keep that string vibrating and keep that sustain going. Because if we just go like this, it kind of fades out. You can do it if you have a strong hammer-on, but it really can kind of sound powerful if you do that kind of almost pulling motion. And you can do it all day. And again, this technique can be done with any combination of fingers. And it can even be done the opposite way, pull off hammer-on. And for the opposite method, we are going to just start with the pull-off. So we'll have our index finger rooted at that 5th fret and pressed down, and we'll have our ring finger at that 7th fret, and we'll do the pull-off. And then we'll do a hard hammer-on. And we can do it back and forth. Again, work on getting that real fluid and your timing right. You can even use a metronome on that. And then work on those really long ones, kind of just feeling how you can kind of pull that string with your ring finger. And then the next technique we're going to use is called vibrato. And vibrato sounds like this. And basically it consists of just moving the string back and forth. And there's different ways to do it. You can do it real slow and big bends like I did before. Or you can do them fast and short. And it's a really cool way to add some interest to your solo. And like the other techniques, you can do vibrato with any finger. And all we're going to do is we're going to fret that note and pick it like we normally would. And then we're just going to move our finger back and forth along the fret. And you'll notice we can sometimes hit the other string, so it takes a little bit of refinement to get it so that you're not hitting those other strings, but it can also sound kind of cool and wild to hit those other strings and get some noise in there. And a good tip is if you're bending with your ring finger, you can use your other fingers to help push. So I have my index finger, my middle finger, and my ring finger all kind of adding force and control to that bend. And for that reason, using your ring finger is probably one of the easiest and best ways to get that vibrato, because you've got a lot of control and strength. But you can also do it with your middle finger. In that case, you have your index finger to help push. Or just with one finger. And so we're going to use that technique in our solos to kind of add some interest if we're holding a note somewhere. And then the last technique we're going to talk about today is probably the trickiest, takes the longest to master. It's bends. And similar to the vibrato, we're going to use our finger to just basically bend the string, except this time we're only going to go in one direction. We're not going to go back and forth. And so the tricky part of bends is getting the control that you need to hit the note that you want to bend the string up to. So for example, at the 7th fret of the G string, I'm bending up a full step, which is 2 frets. So I want to match the tone at the 9th fret of the G string. And that can take a while to master, especially if your ear's not trained. And so what I recommend doing is practicing that. So listen to the 9th fret, or 2 frets up from wherever you're trying to bend, and then practice bending up to that note. You can even use a tuner to do this. For this example, the 7th fret of the G string is a D, and we want to bend up to an E. So if we practice doing this, we can plug into our tuner, we can bend up to an E, and check how accurate we are on the tuner. And then as you work on this, you're going to get a feel for the tension required to bend up a full step, and you're going to train your ear to know where that full step is. And so a few tips when we're doing the bends, just like the vibrato, we're going to want to use our other fingers to help control and push. And another good idea when you're bending the top 3 strings, the 3 thinnest strings, you want to bend towards the middle of the neck, so you're going to push up. And when you're bending the lower 3 strings, you want to bend towards the middle of the neck as well, but that's pulling down. Now, this isn't a hard, fast rule, but what it's going to allow you is it's going to give you more space to push those bends without falling off the edge of the neck. If you try to bend the high E away from the center of the neck, you're just going to fall right off the fretboard. All right, so as promised, here's the lick where we're going to use all of those techniques put together. All right, so you can play this thing as fast as you want to or slowly. I recommend you just kind of start it slowly and then build up to the speed that you want to play it at. This is like a really common blues lick. There's many variations on it, but I'm going to play it for you slowly and walk you through the different techniques we use. So we're going to start with a bend with a ring finger at the 9th fret of the G string. And it's a full step bend. And then we're going to bridge our index finger across the 7th fret of the B and E strings, and we're going to just kind of go quickly up from B to E. You can use alternate picking if you can play it that way, or you can use all downstrokes. And then we're going to do another big bend, this time at the 10th fret of the B string, so it's another full step bend. And if it's difficult for you to bend with your pinky, you can actually use your ring finger there. Again, when we're learning these, we want to focus on accuracy, not speed. So if you have to play it slowly, play it slowly. If you're having trouble with your pinky finger, use your ring finger and bend up accurately with your other fingers to push. And then we're going to go 7th fret of the B string to 9th fret of the G string. So slowly. Then we're going to do a hammer-on pull-off from the 7th to the 9th fret of the G string. So. Then we're going to do another full step bend at the 9th fret of the G string. And end on the 7th fret of the G string with some vibrato. So slowly all the way through. So that's it for this one. I hope you liked the video. If you appreciate this content, remember to like and subscribe. And check out my website, scottobryanguitar.com. I have hundreds of tabs for punk, rock, and grunge songs up there. And I'll see you guys next time.